Hey guys, how's it going? Happy New Year! I have challenged myself to read 50 books this year, which is pretty good for me, and also to make a YouTube review of each of them. So I wanted to go ahead and get started and share with you the first book I've read this year, which is A Dance with Dragons by George R. R. Martin, the fifth book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series. And let me tell you, this is a honker of a book. It is humongous. It's almost 1,200 pages of words and stories and characters, and so much is going on. So if you are new to the A Song of Ice and Fire series, or maybe have just seen the TV show of Game of Thrones, which I love, by the way, then I will share a little bit about that. Basically, it's an epic fantasy, which means that it is on an enormous scale. There's thousands of years of history. There's people spread out across a huge world. There's over 1,000 characters, and there's just so much story and backstory and heraldry and different houses going on, and politics and human emotion, and it's just on such a broad scale. It's enormous. It's amazing. It also can be classified as sort of a hard historical fantasy, which I take to mean that it's kind of grounded in medieval time kind of history without actually being anything historical, and it's hard, so it's more gritty and deals with sex and violence and politics and moral ambiguity than you would normally find in a fantasy work. So that's the sort of genre. There are three overarching main storylines, the first of which is the War of the Five Kings, which wants to control the 7 kingdoms in Westeros. And there's all these kings that are vying for power for their house and prestige, and lots of backstabbing and conniving and people trying to get power. Then there is the Night's Watch with Jon Snow at the Wall on the very edge of the north. The Night's Watch is defending the 7 kingdoms from the wildlings, which are free folk that don't have very many laws, and they are trying to come south. And the others, which are dead people that rise up again, and they have black hands and cold dead eyes, and they live only to attack other people and raise them up again and lead whole armies down south, and winter is coming. And then the third storyline is Daenerys Targaryen, who is of the royal family that was defeated, and now there's a war going on, and she wants to be a queen in her own right and win back Westeros. But she gets sold to the Dothraki and becomes a Khaleesi, and she hatches 3 dragons, and it's all very interesting and exciting. So those are the 3 main storylines, and there's just so much else going on that I can't even begin to scratch the surface, but that's basically what's going on. There are going to be either 7 or 8 books in the series, which is just massive considering that each of them are about 1,000 pages each. There's just so much story that Martin wants to tell, and he said he's going to write as many books as it takes, which could be up to 8. It was originally supposed to be a trilogy, but now it's just expanded into this humongous thing. There are multiple viewpoints. The first one starts out with 9, each chapter being a different one, and you get to really see from those few people's point of view, and then it stretches out in the 5th book to be 31 different viewpoints, which is kind of a lot. But yeah, that's the gist of it. That's kind of the context. As far as writing style, I find it to be very exciting. Martin has a lot of experience working on TV shows where he will put a cliffhanger at the end of an episode. He does that for each chapter. So the chapters are short and you move on to somebody else's head. So it's all very exciting, and just the pace of the books is what you might find in a shorter book, which is nice considering it's humongous and ain't nobody got time for that. And like I said, it's very character driven. So there are so many characters, but each of them have a story and a family and their own motivations for doing whatever crazy stuff that they do. And there's love stories and there's betrayal, and there's so many different things going on with these characters that it just makes you really invested in them. And that's one of the main strengths of his writing, I believe. But that is to say, he also does kill off a bunch of characters, and you think you've got your hero, you think you've got your good guy, and he gets killed. You think that finally something good will happen for this person, and then they die, or their whole family dies. It's just a mess. So it makes you more invested in them, the ones that stay alive, and also you are more invested in their trials and tribulations, because who knows where it's going to lead. It's all very exciting, like I said, and there's just so much going on. There's also lots of gray characters. There's not a lot of good characters, solely good, or evil characters, you know, laughing maniacally. Everybody is out to get whatever they want for themselves at whatever cost, but at the same time they have really good qualities. And so there's light and dark in everybody, and that means there's lots of gray characters where you don't know where you stand with them, and that changes over the course of the series. Like I said before, this series is just enormous, and as a writer myself, I don't understand how he keeps all of this on track. With so many characters, so many subplots, and everything going on, I just don't understand how he keeps it all together. Like, I want to see his notes and notebooks and computer files where all of this is organized, because even I can't keep track of it, and I'm just a reader, and he must know like 1,000 pages more stuff worth of everything that he's not even sharing. It's just immense and crazy, and I don't understand. He is a little bit like heraldry obsessed in terms of like each house having their own shield, and in the first book, when you're trying to learn everybody's names and their houses, and, you know, this one has a dire wolf, this one has a squid, it kind of can bog down the story a little bit because it's a lot to remember. But I can see that it's an interest of his and he really likes it, and eventually you get to memorize them and they're not so bad, but at the beginning, the different heraldry symbols of each house really kind of was hard to get through. There's a lot of sex and rape and violence and disease and very visual things that are very disturbing at times. But it's also very interesting, the amount of scope and depth and just like, it's hard to say, but he can really delve into the psyche of these characters that are doing evil things, and it becomes almost like a psychiatry kind of evaluation, just how evil can you get, but at the same time they are so relatable. So I find that all very fascinating. So next I'll talk about a little bit of my personal experience reading throughout the series. The first book is Game of Thrones, and I have read this about 3 times. I find this to be the most fast-paced and probably the most nostalgic for me, just because it's centered on Winterfell mostly, and you get to know these characters very well, and you become a Stark at heart, and you really are rooting for them, and you know where you stand in terms of these characters. Like, these are the good guys, and everybody else is bad, and it's just very clear-cut, and I like that. I found the prologue to be very hard to get through at first, when I first read it back in like 2005, just because he described everything as gray about 50 times. He mentions that. And in fact, for all of the books, I have a really hard time getting into them, but once you're about 50 pages in, it starts getting good. So that might be something to consider if you're just starting out. Know that they are actually better than their beginnings. Yeah, this book is very exciting and fun to read, and is a great start to the series. The second book, A Clash of Kings, is also very exciting. I loved the ending with the battle at King's Landing. Ends on a huge cliffhanger. You don't know what's happened to Tyrion. You get to know different characters better, and very exciting. Sorry, I'm not explaining these very well. The third book, which I don't have at the moment because I'm lending it to my dad, is Storm of Swords, and it's a green book. This one is actually my favorite, so I wish I had it here to hold for you. But this is where Brienne, the Maid of Tarth, and Jaime Lannister are shoved together and their fates intertwine, and I just love them together. I am not going to spoil anything for you guys that haven't read the series or anything, but I ship them. What can I say? I just really, really like their story, and so the interactions between them are awesome, and that's probably why I like the third book the best. Then there's the fourth book, A Feast for Crows. Oh yeah, I forgot to say that at the end of the third book is the Red Wedding, which is very famous. And so after that, George R. R. Martin decided to write the next 2 books, not chronologically, but to take up the events after the third book and write them geographically. So this 4th book is what's happening in Westeros after that, and this 5th book is what's happening in Essos after that. So I like this book alright. It was kind of slow going. A Feast for Crows, Jaime and Brienne are separated, but you still get to read what they're all about. I still get to read about some of my favorite characters and delve more into the minds of a few of the people that we haven't, that we've only seen from afar, like Cersei, and get to know a little bit more about them, and yeah. So Feast for Crows wasn't bad, and then we come to A Dance with Dragons. And I am not a huge fan of Daenerys. Shoot me down with a lightning bolt, but I'm sorry. I just don't find the world of Essos very interesting. The names are all weird. None of my favorite characters are there. It's all very hot and slimy, and they speak weird languages, and they, like, I don't really like the culture or anything that's really happening. So this was kind of boring for me, I'm sorry to say. the majority of it was hard to get through. But I did find the Theon Greyjoy's slash Reek's story to be very interesting, and that's what got me through this. The evilness of Ramsay Bolton is just too interesting to put down. And so that whole storyline was very cool. And leave me a comment below if you've read this and want to talk about any of the stuff, because I don't want to do spoilery reviews. So just know that in the comments we might be talking about spoilers. But yeah, I have to say I wasn't a huge fan of this, but I did read it to the end, knowing that his next books are going to catch up with what's happening in Westeros again, and I'll get back to my Jaime and my Brienne. Another thing I have to complain about, which I'm sorry, but this book, like I said, is a humongous book, and it was very, very hard physically to read it. I wanted to keep it in really nice condition, so as you can see, this is not broken. The spine is not broken in any way. It looks basically brand new. And I'm trying to start keeping my books in way better condition than I have treated them in the past. But, I mean, you try reading something with only, like, opening the book that much and being on the train next to somebody where you're, like, huddling and going like this. So I had to, like, download a PDF of it and read it on my phone. So that's how I spent the majority reading it. Anyways, that's not a reason to complain about a book, but I will anyway. So, all in all, this review was very subjective, and if that's not your style, I'm sorry, but I can't really be objective about books or movies or any media that I take in, just because I do have my own thoughts and opinions about it, and so they definitely shape how I feel about certain works. So if this is not your type of review, I'm sorry. You can let me know how you like my reviewing style, anything you'd like me to add in the future. Currently I'm reading Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. So that review will be coming next. Oh, and I forgot to rate it. So I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 stars, and you can go see my rating on Goodreads if that's what you want to do. So yeah, I hope you like this. I hope you check out the Song of Ice and Fire series. I didn't particularly happen to like the 5th book, but if you're really into Meereen and Astapori and Jis and Daenerys, all of those, you know, Free Cities places, you might love this book. And that's why reviews are very subjective. So have at it, have fun, and tell me all about your experience, about how you loved it so much. And I hope you know that my rating is not trying to downgrade Martin in any way. I think his writing is fantastic, and the series as a whole I would give 5 out of 5. Just this book in particular is not my favorite. So with all of that said, and a 19-minute video, I hope you will continue watching my videos, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day. Happy New Year once again, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!